Hello, welcome back to another episode of GAPCAST. I'm Debbie Foreman, your host. This is where we either do reactions with famous people or notorious people that talk about the world of gaps, or that I bring in some type of observation about how gaps affect our lives. And today I want to talk about me personally. I want to talk about the fact that my degree did not prepare me for this, or for my life, or for everything that I've lived. And I'm 57, and I started college really young at 16. By 19, I was pretty much out. So we're going from 20, that's 37 years of like a degree in international relations, stuff like that, it did not prepare me for what I have. And I just want to talk about a couple of things that I went through. Like, I remember the exact feeling of being bombarded on all fronts. Like all fronts. That kind of thing that hits when everything that I thought I prepared suddenly just didn't. And whoof, we're going back. We're going back to 1994. I was about 25 years old. And I opened my first business abroad. Okay. Since 1994, I've been in business for myself, ups and downs, goods and bads. But I had prepared. I'd been in school since I was a kid. I'd gone through college. I'd gotten my first multinational jobs abroad. And now I thought I was capable because I had learned to do everything that I thought I needed to do. I was driven and I was educated, or so I thought. But what was the hard truth behind all of this? I was absolutely, completely unprepared for what you actually have to do to run a business in a foreign country. Now let me go back. I had been in Brazil since 1989. Now we're in 1994. That's 5 years. I'd been part of 2 American startup operations. And from the time the United States came down, set up operations, got everything up and running, and I did well. The first one was good. The second one pulled me out from the first one. And now I thought, okay, I'm good. Now I'm opening a business for myself. No one, when I say no one, had taught me how to navigate foreign tax systems, and they showed up completely, absolutely uninvited. They didn't tell me about, I wasn't taught the hiring structures for a small business. I had been part of the startup operation, so I knew that there was an HR department and they had all these processes, and then you would go and interview and get hired and trained. I didn't know how to set those processes up by myself. And they didn't resemble from a multinational, because I was a small business. The legal frameworks that felt like every single contract felt like a risk, because I really didn't understand the law. The operational changes were constant, and the operations basically depended on who I spoke to from each person's perspective of how things should operate. So what I thought would go into building my business did not. It did not. So I had a purpose, and that was to train people on closing gaps. But what was I doing? I was doing administration. I was doing hiring. I was doing legal. I was doing accounting. And I finally realized that to be in business for yourself means that you need to be able to do all of these skills at a certain level, and you need to know how to hire the people that have the expertise. But to be able to hire them, you have to make the money, and to make the money, you need to be able to focus on the essence, the core of why you opened the business in the first place. And what actually took time, and I'm telling you, it took every ounce of my time, energy, had never been on my radar. And looking back, I want to laugh at it now, but I remember the desperation, the anxiety, oh my God, I'm going to flounder like there's no tomorrow. And then all of a sudden I'm like, why did I even go to college? My degree did not prepare me for this. And it wasn't because I wasn't qualified, but it was because I wasn't ready. I wasn't qualified. I was qualified to do a lot of stuff, but I wasn't ready for the demands. So for the first 3 years, and I want you guys to kind of go back and kind of think about this, everybody's been in a situation. It doesn't mean that you're in business for yourself. It could be a new job, a career transition into a new field. It could be motherhood or parenthood or fatherhood. It could be a new relationship. But I'm looking back, so many years. For the first 3 years, now that I look back on it, I realize I wasn't only building a business. What I was actually doing was building my capacity to own one. I was learning systems. I was understanding structures. I was paying for mistakes. I was rebuilding decisions I didn't even know that I was making wrong. I would make it absolutely sure that I was right, and then poof, then I was like having to rebuild that. Um, this is a long time ago, but the time and the effort built self reliance. I didn't have a choice. I mean, theoretically, you could say you did have a choice. You could lose everything and start all over, but that's not what I had set out to do. I had set out to own my own business and become a specialist and be where I am today. And I think that's when I really honed into the fact that what was required, and I kept saying, what is required for me? It's tax, legal, operations. We lost the connection for a second, just so you know. It's back. Tax, what was required of me? If I wanted to own my own business, but most of all, if I wanted to own my destiny and build my legacy. If it hadn't been for the hardships that I had gone through, I don't think that question would have ever been. If my life had been status quo, if I had been in a safety net, go to work, get your paycheck, go to work, get your paycheck, do your job, have the trials and tribulations. But knowing at the young age of 25 that I had set out to do something different, I knew and I started thinking that the only way to build a legacy is to firm up on that destiny. And now I want to talk about something else. I wish I had known. And most people just don't say these things out loud. Let me go back, okay? I had all that energy. I was young and I had a shitload of energy. And that energy had to go into investing in figuring things out as they came and at the expense of what I actually had to set out to build. I know I'm kind of repetitive here, but just think about it. I had to develop a service. That service had to create an impact. If that service had an impact, then it would be successful. If it was successful, I'd get more clients. I had to maintain the vision, the service, the impact. And how was I going to create those structures if I was busy trying to keep just the operational side of a startup in a country that I wasn't prepared for? So I had to start building those frameworks and structures for the core so they could work pretty much on their own while I was busy doing the stuff that I had to learn to do. And now, 30 years later, 35 years later, I look back and say, what would have been my life if I had not built those frameworks? If I had not implemented those frameworks, if those frameworks had not been successful, if those structures that I built for the service, built for the learning, built for the knowledge, those structures have evolved over years, but today they are what sustains my operation. They're what sustains my growth. They're what sustains my legacy. And as I look back and, at 57, we look in it's like, imagine you're driving a car down like the desert road from LA to Vegas or something. You're just straight on a flat road and you're kind of nodding off. When you get to this age, that's kind of the phase that we're in. We're on autopilot. But the truth is that when we look in the rearview mirror, we see our past behind us clearer than we see with that sandstorm in front of us where everything's kind of hazy. And as I've been kind of reflecting on this, I realized that these are what we call the organizational readiness gaps. The space between being qualified to start and being prepared to sustain, being prepared to compete, and being prepared to grow. That first business I ran for 17 years, but the first 3 years, they built me, not threes. It was not easy. Built it through pressure, through responsibility, through learning the hard way that success is not just handed over. Success is constructed piece by piece through what no one prepared me for. And today, I see this everywhere. I live it day to day. I mean, if you think, for me, it's like a guiding light. Today, I feel highly capable. I feel qualified. No, I don't feel it. It's going to sound arrogant. Today, I am highly capable and I am highly qualified. And so what I feel is that it's my calling, and it always has been, but my destiny for that legacy to make everybody else around me, or to help other people around me that are in that same situation, whether they're young and starting, whether they're career transitioning, whether they're in a stagnant mode where things aren't going, because that college degree didn't necessarily prepare us. The first few jobs that we have may not have prepared us. The transition that we think we're prepared for, we might not be able to. And people start feeling like, well, I thought I was qualified and I'm not, which means I'm a failure, but you're not. So for individuals, teams, and organizations, they begin to start feeling overwhelmed by realities that they just weren't trained to do, trained to handle. Now I want to think about this. Come back with me for a second, because my brain is kind of like wandering all over as I'm talking about this. This is the pinpoint problem that I keep hitting on and honing on this year in 2026. This is where stagnation quietly begins. It does not begin from a lack of ambition. So if it doesn't come from a lack of ambition and you're stagnant, then what does it come from? It comes from pouring time and effort into systems that were never fully understood. That shift for me was a very simple shift, because I understood that I had an aha moment, but it was not easy. And people, especially now, everything's quick on the phone, AI, we didn't have that. We had to sit and write and do and study. But to make a shift is easy if you allow it. Let me actually rephrase that. Shifts are easy when you accept the fact that you have to shift. Shifts are simple. The work is not easy, okay? It requires work. And at one given moment, I stopped asking myself, am I capable? Because when you start asking that, you're getting stuck into the stagnation, into that spiral. But what I did start asking myself, what am I not prepared for in this environment? Am I able to map that? And that's when I really got into heavy mapping of skills, environments, cultures, layers, stakeholders. What are you not prepared for? I know that I know. I know that I don't know. I don't know that I know. And I don't know that I don't know. But then you flip it, and it's like, what am I doing that I should be doing? What am I doing that I shouldn't be doing? What am I not doing that I should be doing? And what am I not doing that I shouldn't be doing, which is actually a double negative, which is a positive. I just went through those real quick. Let's see if we can throw those onto the screen, sorry. Because when you start asking yourself that question to go into a shift, it's like, what am I not prepared for in the environment? That question and the framework begins to do something very powerful. It removes the emotion. It reveals the gap. And it gives something to start and to work with, so you can remove all of that clutter, all of that noise inside your head of capacity, capability, where the self-esteem, all of that starts to flutter away, because now you see something very clear and you know what you have to do. Well, all right, I can go on for hours on that. So what happens 35 some odd years later? Well, over that 30-year period, most of my work, and I created a gap for myself. Let me go back for this. I started building, training and corporate environments and non-for-profits and educational systems, so on and so forth. But I was always hired by some big shot CEO, major director, stakeholders, operational directors, something like that. They would hire me to come in below and to start closing those gaps and those readiness and the strategies, the tools, the operations, the people, all that kind of stuff. And who was I impacting the most? Was it the big decision maker way up at the top? No, it was the people in the day-to-day that didn't have that clarity and the strength and the framework to be able to do that stuff on their own, and they were being pressured from above. Well, then COVID hit, and my phone started ringing, and people were like, hey, 15 years ago, you did something that changed my life. 18 years ago, 6 years ago. And people started asking me during COVID if I could help them. I couldn't help every individual. So I decided to find a way to simplify all that complexity for others, for individuals. How to identify, how to structure, how to close the gaps that are overlooked. And that's when GAPTrax was born. The framework is the same that we've always used. Oh, sorry about that. The framework is the same that we've always used, but it's simplified, taking away the complexity, and all it takes is the work. The shift, that's up here. That's the freedom of your mind. The freedom inside your head that says, I'm free. I am free in this world because we live in a democracy. I'm not talking about the people that aren't. But what if I'm in a moment where things feel heavier than they are? Or heavier than they should be? Or heavier than I had ever expected? What happens when that effort isn't translating into results? Most people push harder. But the whole question is, don't. Look closer to see, to pinpoint, and to close that gap. So I brought this up because I went on my personal journey, and now I'm closing gaps in my operation here because like 3 years ago, I moved back to the United States after almost 40 years abroad, 36 in Brazil and a couple of other places before that. A lot of you know my story. But I got here into the United States. I landed at 53. I fled from a disastrous personal situation, grabbed $500, my daughter, got on a plane, landed here. I was like, shit, what do I do now? How do I start all over? How do I turn this into something where everybody knew me and here nobody knows me? And is that only going to be digital? And for the rest of my life, I'm going to be digital, which meant that I had to close a skill gap, which I'm still learning 3 years later, which is all the digital resources. I was not comfortable YouTubing. I was not comfortable sitting and talking yaki to myself. I wanted the stage. I wanted a room. I wanted the workshop. And so I'm still learning. But what have I learned through all of this? Resilience. Resilience. Resilience is built when you have framework. Closing gaps, framework. Confronting the difficulties, framework. So if any of this resonates with you, just one little drop, I mapped some of this out into a process, a simple process, an initial process, an awareness, an aha process that's free in my GAP ebook. I want to kind of just let you guys know that it's there. Click on the link. The link, people are going to put the link in for you. We'll see if I can put a little bit up on screen. But I just want you to know that that feeling of desperation, that the environment isn't cohesive to where you are, you're not cohesive to the environment. And then when it starts feeling like it's anchoring you or dragging you down, there's a simple framework to get out of it. And that desperation doesn't have to exist, even at the ripe old age of 57. Okay? So work through it with me. Let's work together. And remember that content informs, but framework transforms. And that means that you need to do the work yourself. I'm here, questions and answers. See, like I told you, I'm still learning. Like, subscribe, comment, download the free ebook, join me, question. And I'm going to do another one just in a few minutes about something that happened today. So if you like this one, I'm going to talk about thought partnering. The two sides of it, how to make money and how to pay for good thoughts. All right? Thanks for joining me here on GAPCAST. I'm your host, Debbie Foreman. See you on the next one.